Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 13th day of November 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic, eastern Beaufort Sea coast there, Prudhoe Bay, Kaktovik, Barter Island, winter weather advisory out that kicks into effect at 6 p.m. Friday evening and stays in effect throughout the night, Friday night, and through the day Saturday until about 9 p.m. Saturday evening. And that's for strong winds, and there'll be a little bit of new snow, but not too much. But what does fall will be blown around with those 55-mile-an-hour wind gusts that are in the forecast. That could reduce visibility to less than a half mile at times. Otherwise, winds will be lighter back on the western central Arctic coast, as well as areas to the south. So there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out for the interior of the state, as well as the Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska, Kodiak, pretty good, and also out over the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Although a pretty big storm expected to come in to the begin to affect the western Aleutians, southwest Bering during the day on Sunday, as a pretty active frontal system brings almost storm force winds right now going 45 knots into the Shimia to Amchitka Island area, but that's Sunday afternoon. Otherwise, satellite imagery today, no big storms out there at all. You can see massive higher clouds with higher tops dropping southward into the northern Bering Sea. And to the south of that, a lot of open cell Q type clouds, cold air out over the open water and becomes unstable, warmer water than the air, and becomes unstable and you get showers. Mostly in the form of snow or rain and snow mix along the Aleutians to the Fox Islands, and kind of an enhancement there south of the Alaska Peninsula, taking off to the east. Otherwise, pretty windy day, Kodiak Island, northwest winds, or rather breezy day, Kodiak Island, those northwest winds. Let's see, they were gusting up to about 35 miles an hour, both at Sitkinak and the state airport today. Pilot Point, same thing, northwest or west-northwest, 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And also at Augustine Island, they had winds out of the west-northwest up to 45 miles per hour. And otherwise, just some clouds and some areas of light snow showers occurring over south the Kenai Peninsula northward there across the Talkeetnans into the Fairbanks area. Also the western Alaska Range, Sparivon, for example, picked up 1 to 2 inches of snow. And most other areas there that had the snow was less than that. Some areas didn't see anything at all. There are probably a few areas that had a little bit more than that, but generally light snowfall amounts where it did occur with kind of a general lack of any strong storm systems. Panhandle seeing some showers continuing today in the form of rain or snow, depending on your elevation, the time of day, and your latitude, with kind of an enhancement upper level system cutting across the Queen Charlotte's there. But rainfall amounts weren't too terribly heavy. For example, Sitka picked up about, 6/100ths of an inch, while Juneau only had 1/100th of an inch, as well as Haines. Yakutat, though, did pick up about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation there, and that was kind of the exception more than the rule. And a little bit of light snow fell in Valdez in the last 12 hours, but I believe under an inch or so. Otherwise, winds kind of gusty there. St. Lawrence Island this afternoon, gusts close to 50 miles an hour actually at Gamble out of the north. And west winds gusting to 35 miles an hour at Pilot Point in the Alaska Peninsula, as I mentioned. Also at St. George Island, seeing gusts 35 miles an hour. And that extends right down to Nikolsky, where they had 47-mile-an-hour wind gusts there, about as windy as Gamble up on St. Lawrence Island. And Kivalina, east-northeast winds gusting to 32 miles an hour this afternoon. Otherwise, areas of light snow and snow showers, mostly south of the Brooks Range with high pressure in over the North Slope and lower pressure in the Arctic there, west-northwest of Banks Islands, and the high over the North Slope. Enough of a gradient kick those winds up on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and that'll even tighten up later tonight. Otherwise, weak low pressure there off the Panhandle, again circulating bands of rain and snow showers into the area. They're pretty light today. The next one might pick up, might be a little bit more in the way of precipitation, or maybe not. Anyway, for tonight, you see that low center actually kind of troughs out and actually redevelops back to the west. That's in response to colder air coming southward and out over the western Gulf of Alaska. And that tends to pull that low center back to the west and then kind of hold it in place as long as the cold outflow is going on. Nothing too strong yet. And then a stronger system they're pulling into just north of Togiak. So look for areas of snow and snow showers, but amounts will be light, generally under 2 inches in most areas out that way, and just some lingering isolated snow showers over the central interior, as well as the Talkeetna Mountains and the southeast Copper River Basin. Chance of rain and snow showers north Gulf Coast, and continued unsettled for the Panhandle. Wind's not a problem, and snowfall levels will be a little bit lower in the north than they will be in the south. And rain and snow showers also for the Alaska Peninsula and much of the Aleutians, tapering off out towards Shimia. High pressure developing over the far western Bering Sea. You'll see for tomorrow shifts eastward with a fairly strong ridge there right from the Pacific into the Russian Far East. North winds on the increase, or it'll stay windy for the Pribilofs, maybe lightening up a little bit there for the St. Lawrence Island area tomorrow afternoon. And then a couple of troughs skirting the Arctic coast there. That keeps that winter weather advisory. They'll definitely tighten the gradient up with that trough. When those troughs pass, gusts 55 miles an hour. In between, a little bit lighter, definitely better conditions. And North Slope really not looking too bad. And south of the Brooks Range, or in the Brooks Range into the interior, colder temperatures, clearer skies, lighter winds with colder and cooling trend and colder temperatures. South central Alaska, Matanuska, Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, as well as Cook Inlet and Kodiak Island. And really no change for the Panhandle through tomorrow, with rain and snow showers possible all along the area there to the North Gulf Coast. Out on the western edge of the map, you can see tightening gradient ahead of the next system that will actually shift off to the southeast. One center moves up there into the northeast Sea of Irkutsk, and the stronger center now south of the Shimia 2 area. But that front right now going to bring 45 knot winds into the area from Amchitka to Shimia now too, with rain heavy at times, and shouldn't affect the central Aleutians till, well, probably affect Adak late Sunday evening, or late Sunday afternoon, or by early evening. Otherwise, high pressure shifts eastward over the eastern Bering Sea for light winds there and mostly clear skies. Lingering snow showers, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, strong high pressure, Arctic high pressure. Temperatures staying below zero over the central and northern interior for the day Sunday. And colder temperatures, windier conditions, southern Alaska through the mountain passes. The Panhandle drying out with a good amount of clearing, and increasing north winds there for outflow winds, colder temperatures for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay area. Lows tonight anywhere from 10 to 20 below up over the northeast interior, Arctic Village, for example, and a little below zero eastern Beaufort Sea coast to up mid-lower 20s there from the Seward Peninsula to Point Hope, and 20 to 25 southwest coast. Otherwise, right around zero for the Tanana Valley, and a little below zero Copper River Basin. Down into the teens again, Susitna Matanuska Valley, northern Cook Inlet, 20 southern Kenai Peninsula, and mid-20s to mid-30s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, lower 30s to lower 40s for the southeast coast. Highs mostly staying in the 20s here for the North Gulf Coast, South Central Alaska, and single numbers Copper River Basin. Upper 20s Bristol Bay, upper 30s Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s for the Aleutians and the Pribilofs, and staying below zero there, upper Yukon Valley and the eastern Brooks Range. And then even colder on Sunday morning, 10 to 25 below call up for the lows, with upper Yukon Valley, Chuckitsik could see minus 25. Minus 10 possible for the Gulkana area, and lower to mid-teens for the south central Alaska area, Susitna Valley. 5 below for McGrath, and 20 to 35 for the Panhandle. Highs, lower 40s out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and staying below zero roughly for the greater Fairbanks area up into the upper Yukon Valley, Kobuk Valley, Brooks Range, and upper 20s to lower 40s for the southeast coast, and in the teens to mid-20s for south central Alaska, to near 30 near Homer, and mid-30s for Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphics Saturday morning. IFR, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and the eastern North Slope, otherwise marginal VFR there, north of the Brooks Range. Central eastern Bering Sea, or let's call it the central Bering Sea, marginal VFR. IFR, southeast Bering, including Atka, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And then that gives way to VFR for northeast Bristol Bay, on up across western Cook Inlet, but some IFR in northern Cook Inlet into the Madawaska-Susitna Valley and up around the northwest Copper River Basin, Alaska Range. And some IFR Yukon Flats and out toward Selawik there. And some IFR central and southern inside waters of the Panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR. VFR from the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island. And in the afternoon, Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, VFR into the central interior VFR with some scattered areas of marginal VFR that become much more widespread across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, central eastern Bering Sea, marginal up through western Seward Peninsula, Noatak Valley, Kotzebue, VFR, IFR, Brooks Range, central and eastern North Slope to the eastern Arctic coast, IFR, the next system pushing into the far western Aleutians. And that's, let's see, pushes a little farther to the east for Sunday morning, a little bit out there with some VFR under high pressure ridging that's shifting eastward as well. Adak Atka to the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island. Marginal VFR, Eastern Bering Sea, Yukon Delta. VFR basically for interior Alaska, but some low clouds, fog creating some IFR, northern Cook Inlet again, and the Yukon Flats, Kobuk Valley, Selawik Valley areas, and just off Kodiak Island on the east side, there's some IFR, otherwise marginal VFR along the North Gulf Coast to about Elfin Cove, VFR for the Panhandle. VFR for the southeast coast, up down toward Dixon Entrance, a little bit marginal condition for Sunday afternoon. Southern Alaska, south of the Alaska Range. VFR, and really good over the Bering Sea, central and eastern VFR there, right up into the Chukchi Sea, then about Kivalina, up to Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, all the Arctic coast, North Slope, marginal. Areas of marginal VFR in the interior. And IFR coming into the western Aleutians, edging slowly eastward. Now passes Anatuvik and Adigan, marginal VFR become IFR in the afternoon, a little bit of moisture increasing there from the north and northwest. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR becomes VFR, improvement for both passes there. And for Windy, looks like VFR flying for Windy Pass and Isabel VFR. Mintasta, marginal VFR, 2 VFR conditions, and Tanita IFR to marginal VFR. Portage, marginal to VFR. And for Chilcoot White, look for occasional marginal VFR throughout the day. Could be VFR at times in the afternoon, kind of bouncing back and forth there right on the edge. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet there down over the Queen Charlottes. So really south of the state with the jet off to the south now. And at the surface there through the central Bering Sea and then right along the southwest coast, hugging the entire coastline over toward, again, about Elfin Cove, cutting southeastward, splitting the Panhandle there. And for icing, areas of light to isolated, very isolated, moderate, probably rime or mixed icing for the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast, most of that staying offshore. A little bit that could sneak into western Prince William Sound. And then kind of a widespread area of icing potential there over the eastern Bering Sea that extends in a narrow band through the Bering Strait to the far western Arctic coast areas there. And then down across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, mixed icing, mostly light, of the light variety there, just the potential of it. Otherwise, the interior, western Bering Sea and Aleutians, icing free. Jet stream, upper level lows, basically over the state, a couple of weak high centers there, really just a lack of storminess more than a presence of any high pressure. The main ridge, though, out to the west there, that's going to be gradually shifting eastward. And that northerly flow, northwest flow, become northerly, and that'll actually shift into the western interior midday Sunday as old pattern shifts eastward. Otherwise, 9,000 feet tomorrow, 35 to 40 knot northerlies there over the Bering Sea, increase 45 to 55 knots west central Aleutians, and 9,000 feet north-northeasterlies, 35 to 40 knots there, coming down across the Aleutians and eastern central Bering Sea, and turbulence that results in light to isolated moderate chop, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Arctic coast, and otherwise pretty much.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snyder, and joining me today is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. And Cindy, we hear a lot about tsunamis in the news, probably a lot more than we used to, but let's remind everybody, what is a tsunami?
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sure.
Tsunami is basically, it's really simple. It's just a disturbance in the water column. So the entire water column from the seafloor to the sea surface is disturbed by something major, usually a major earthquake. But it can also be a volcanic eruption, even an asteroid. Landslide is especially dangerous.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in my bathtub and I drop a bath toy, that could be a bathtub tsunami.
It is absolutely a bathtub tsunami.
Okay, very good. So Alaska is one of the states, or maybe the state, with the greatest amount of coastline. So tsunamis are a pretty major risk here in Alaska. Who is most at risk?
Yeah, Alaska is significant. We actually make most of the Pacific's tsunamis.
Wow, okay.
On the Aleutian Trench. And it's where the Pacific Plate is subducting underneath the American Plate. And we produce some very large, great quakes. And of course, the most at risk is the Aleutian Trench.
Okay.
But that extends into south central Alaska as well. They're at huge risk. And then southeast Alaska's risk is really mostly landslide focused.
Okay. Are there any places along the Alaskan coastline that don't have a tsunami risk, or at least a very, very low risk?
Absolutely. The Bering Sea's risk is very low, and the Arctic's risk is very low as well.
Okay, so when we're talking about tsunami dangers, those are places that need to be monitored, but probably not really.
No, I
Not a
mean,
big
I
deal.
won't say never.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know
You can't.
better.
Science knows better.
Right. So,
Very good.
near to never.
Okay. Well, let's just say you're on the coast, anywhere in Alaska. What are warning signs that tsunami dangers are threatening you right now?
This is super important because Alaska's greatest risk, especially out on the Aleutians and South Central, is a near-field tsunami. And then, of
Okay.
course, the landslides in Southeast, it's even more intense because we
So
can't.
shorter warning time.
No warning time.
Okay.
The earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
And that is the most important thing for anybody to remember. The water can arrive in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes, wow.
Yeah, at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, we need to get the warning out in 5 minutes. So for those near-field tsunamis, it's the earthquake is the warning. So
Okay.
if you feel shaking,
Okay.
and of course the first thing you do is drop, cover, and hold,
Right.
and you need to start counting
Okay.
slowly to 20.
The right way. How do you do that?
Oh, I teach kids to do it with their favorite things. So
Okay.
1 chocolate, 2 chocolate, 3 chocolate, but you
Chocolate's
can
good.
count anything you like.
Okay.
And if you're thinking of something happy, that helps.
Okay.
Especially helps kids, but it'll help your
So you
psyche.
don't speed up because you're getting stressed out. I see.
Right. It actually lowers your heart rate.
Interesting.
You know, so
Okay.
if you think of something you love and practice that. So you're in an earthquake, you're under the table, you're next to the ocean,
Okay.
right?
Right.
This is important if you're next to the ocean.
Okay.
If you're not next to the ocean, don't worry about it. Just stay in place under cover.
And you're talking about a mile, a quarter mile? What's close?
A mile, even a couple miles.
Okay.
You know, our rule of thumb used to be a mile inland was safe, but the last few tsunamis have taught us otherwise.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, in Japan we had an inundation up to 10 miles.
Right.
So,
Okay. And that was a big quake.
That was a big
So
quake.
you have a quake, you're counting slowly to 20.
to 20.
What's next?
And if you get to 20 and it's still shaking, you need to evacuate.
Okay.
And that is, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because you're
That's a big quake.
evacuating in a live event that's still shaking. You know, 1964 shook for 4.5 minutes. Indonesia shook for 12 minutes.
Wow. Right.
Japan, I think, shook for 6. I'm not sure of that, but it was long. Anyway, more
Right.
than 20 seconds.
And that's a sign of a very major earthquake, the worst.
Well, 20 seconds is a magnitude 7, so that's
Okay.
not the worst. But what a magnitude 7 can do is trigger a landslide.
Okay.
And those landslides might be a submarine landslide, so you won't see it, you won't hear it, you won't know it, and then the water's moving.
Okay.
So that's really, really, really dangerous. That's what happened in 64 first. Seward, Valdez, Whittier all had landslides first.
Okay. And when you're talking about the water is a warning sign too. What happens with the water that gives you a very easy visual sign that something's changing?
Not guaranteed. It might go out. It might go way out really fast enough to leave the fish behind. But that's not guaranteed. It might just be a fast flood instead.
Okay.
So either way, if it's acting like a super fast rising tide, faster than a tide should rise,
Right.
get out of there.
Okay.
And if it goes out really fast, get out of there.
Yeah.
You know, we lost a lot of lives because people will go check out the new tide pools or
Sure.
pick up fish or shells or, you know, so, and it should feel weird.
Right.
You know, it should be weird.
So pay attention to those natural warning signs and how you feel, because those are maybe the only clues you have.
Right, and you know, sound also. You can hear a tsunami. It'll sound like a roaring train, maybe.
Okay.
Or it might sound silent because the water's been pulled out.
Right.
And that's pretty weird. Imagine camping
Yeah.
at night
Yeah.
near the beach, and all of a sudden you don't hear the ocean anymore.
That would be different.
That would be weird. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you also might hear blowing bubbles, and that's actually from the pressure that's blowing the air out from the sand grains, rock grains.
Interesting.
So if you hear blowing bubbles, that's a little weird.
Okay.
Or clinking rocks, you know, like a rain stick. So those are the sound signs. So the visual is rushing in or rushing out, and roaring especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to get people and keep people aware of what the tsunami warning signs are and what their risks are around Alaska. And there's a website that can help them do that. Where can they go online to get more information for their school, their home, their church, their business?
Oh, there's several. The National Tsunami Warning Center has a website as well, and the easiest way to look that up is just NTWC.
NTWC.
The
Okay.
URL is not intuitive at all.
Okay.
There's also ready.alaska.gov. The state of Alaska has a lot of helpful stuff. Preparedness kits. They have everything you need to get ready.
Okay.
And then for teachers and others, there's a wonderful curriculum called Alaska Tsunami Education Program.
Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Okay.
And that's AKwx.
AKwx. Okay, very good. Those are really good tips to get more information and search that out and help your own community stay safe with the threat of tsunamis around Alaska. Next time we come back and talk to you some more about the Tsunami Ready program and get more in depth on how people can learn more about the risks and what to do here in Alaska. So thank you for joining us today, Cindy. And next time on Alaska Weather Facts, more on tsunamis around Alaska. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the sea ice analysis, today's sea ice analysis, that open area there off the north of the central Arctic coast, that's thinning out and kind of expanding westward, the ice is, and even with the gusty west winds that's occurring on the eastern side there, and slowly expanding there for the western Arctic coast, as well as in Kotzebue Sound and Norton Bay, a little bit in Norton Sound as well. Now, probably continue for the next several days. And for coastal water forecasts, tomorrow, south winds 15 knots for the entire coast, and seas running 11 to 15 feet. Inside waters are clear and straight, light southeast winds at 10, and southeast 20 for Stevens Passage, with gale force gusts to 35 knots. Otherwise, light northerlies for Lynn Canal at 10 knots with seas at 2 feet. Sunday, increase in the winds there, north 30 knots, small craft advisories, Lynn Canal, higher gusts, and northeast 20 for Stevens Passage. Clear and straight, southeast 15 knots, 3-foot seas, and south winds at 20 knots along the coast of Prince of Wales Island, and the central coast northeast at 20. Small craft advisories from the north coast, 20 to 25 knot winds out of the northeast with seas 7 to 9 feet. Prince William Sound tomorrow, north 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Small craft advisories there for the eastern North Gulf Coast. For east winds at 25 knots, western North Gulf Coast, north winds at 20 knots. And small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, where winds will be out of the northwest at 25 with 6 to 7 foot seas. And for Cook Inlet, northerlies 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas. Outlook for Sunday, Cook Inlet, north winds 15 to 20 knots, so 3 to 5 foot seas. Otherwise, Kamishak Bay, a little bit stronger, both for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, but staying under gale force with 30 knot winds out of the north and northwest. And the North Gulf Coast, northeast winds 20 knots, 6 feet, north 15 for Prince William Sound. And Kodiak Island, northwest winds continuing to trend downward, coming down about 20 knots sustained tomorrow with 3 to 6 foot seas. And northwest 30 knots, that's good for small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, seas running 10 to 12 feet. And Bristol Bay, pretty light northerlies at 10 knots. That'll increase as that gradient and the ridge shifts eastward into the eastern Bering, so the gradient will be a little more tight, will be tighter over both Kodiak Island and Bristol Bay. Alaska Peninsula northerlies 30 knots and 25 knots Bristol Bay, with all the way up the east side of Kodiak Island from Castle Cape, 30 knot winds out of the north, while Chillicothe Strait 25 knots, seas 5 feet. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, Northwest winds 30 to maybe 35 knots at times, with seas running 12 to 15 feet. Small craft advisory, Central Aleutians, northwest 30 knots. Coming down to 20 knots, Amchitka Island out of the northwest, and then swinging around from Kiska to Shimia in the afternoon, becoming south at 20 with 6-foot seas. And then those will increase markedly with that next big storm approaching an active frontal system. So just under storm force for the area from Kiska to Shimia from the southeast, coming up to 45 knots, seas building toward 20 feet. Eastern Aleutians, Adak and Atka, east winds 30 to 35 knots. And now the eastern Aleutians for Unalaska Island, northerlies 30 knots. Unmac Island, north to northeast, 25 to 30 knots. And up along the west coast, north winds 25 to 30 knots, strongest along the Yukon Delta coast with 11-foot seas. And northwest 30 for the Pribilof, seas 13 feet. And St. Lawrence Island, north winds 30 knots, 13-foot seas with small craft advisories for Norton Sound, north winds 25 knots. Those will fall back to about 20 knots on Sunday, and for St. Lawrence Island becoming southwest at 20 with 6-foot seas. Otherwise, small craft advisories continue along the southwest coast, north to northwest, 25 to 30 knots, north 20 for the Pribilof, seas 9 feet, southwest 25, St. Matthew Island. And full gales on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, west 40 knots there, and then 30 knots on the eastern stretch. And for the central coast, we've got northwest at 25, and the west side, northwest 20 from Cape Beaufort to Wales, northerlies 20 to 25 knots with seas up to 9 feet. And then for Sunday, southwest 25 knots there for the area from Wales to Point Lacey. Central Arctic coast, west at 20, and brisk wind advisories, westerlies 25 to 30 knots, coming down a little bit on Sunday, but not ending completely for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. For tonight, windy winter weather advisory out for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, Barter Island, Kaktovik, and I believe Prudhoe Bay. Winds gusting 55 miles an hour, reduced visibilities, and high pressure builds eastward and then into the interior on Sunday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.